The sharp click of high heels on polished marble echoed like gunshots in the hushed stillness of the lawyer's office. "Emma, don't you dare sign that!" The voice, raw with fury, tore through the solemn quiet. Emma froze, her pen poised an inch above the deed of gift. Her knuckles were white, a stark contrast against the dark wood of the desk, but she refused to look up. The attorney, an older gentleman with a meticulously trimmed silver beard and tired eyes behind wire-framed glasses, let out a nearly imperceptible sigh, his gaze shifting to the woman who had just stormed past his receptionist. Dolores stood in the doorway, breathing heavily, one hand pressed against the frame as if to steady herself. Her eyes, a flinty gray, burned with the righteous fire of someone watching her birthright being stolen. Behind her loomed James, Emma's husband, her son. He looked less like a man and more like a ghost, wishing the Persian rug would swallow him whole. "You have no right," Dolores marched to the desk, her voice trembling not with fear, but with indignant ownership. "That condo belonged to my late husband, which means it belongs to me." Emma slowly lifted her head. Her hazel eyes showed no shock, no alarm, only a deep, weary resignation, the look of someone who had been waiting for this exact storm to break for a very, very long time. "The title is in my name, Dolores. Your husband, may he rest in peace, executed the transfer 3 years ago. You know this perfectly well." A flush crept up her neck. Her manicured fingers, adorned with rings that were now too tight, gripped the edge of the desk until the jewels bit into her skin. "He was sick. He wasn't in his right mind. You took advantage of a weak old man." "Mr. Henderson was of sound mind and memory," the attorney interjected, his tone dry and factual, a buffer against the emotional tide. "I have the medical affidavits right here. The transfer is irrevocable and entirely legal." Dolores's eyes flew to her son. Her look was a silent command, a desperate plea. James shifted his weight from one foot to the other, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, his gaze darting between his mother and his wife like a trapped animal searching for an exit that didn't exist. "James, tell her." Dolores's voice turned sharp, a needle seeking its target. "Tell your wife she can't do this. This is our family's legacy." James opened his mouth, but the words dissolved into ash on his tongue. He knew the truth. He knew why his father had quietly, deliberately signed the condo over to Emma. He could still hear those late-night kitchen conversations, the smell of herbal tea and regret, as his dad, sensing his own time was running out, had whispered, "Take care of the kids, Emma. Dolores shall either sell it or spend the equity on another cruise. You'll keep it safe for the grandbabies." "Mom, let's talk about this at home," he finally managed to choke out, the words feeble. "At home?" Dolores's voice scaled a register that made the attorney wince. "While she's in here giving away what's ours? Are you blind? She's going to sell it." "I'm going to trade it," Emma corrected, her voice still calm, but a new undercurrent of steel was audible now. "For 2 smaller units, one for each of the kids for when they're older, for their future." "Lies!" Dolores spat the word. "You want it all for yourself. Don't think I don't see right through you. A little nobody from some backwater town living in student housing. You saw a nice condo in a good neighborhood and set your sights on my James." Emma stood up. The movement was swift, and her chair rolled back with a protest against the floor. She drew herself to her full height, which was still several inches shorter than Dolores, and met her mother-in-law's glare head-on.
"I lived in a dorm because I was on a full academic scholarship. I worked 2 jobs so I wouldn't have to ask my parents, who are farmers, for money. And I fell in love with your James in spite of this condo, in spite of you, Dolores." She let the declaration hang in the air, thick and heavy. "For 10 years, I've listened to your critiques. For 10 years, I've been the wrong kind of wife. My cooking is off, my cleaning isn't thorough enough, I'm too lenient with the children. You've treated our home as an extension of your own, using your key to let yourself in unannounced, rearranging my kitchen, throwing out my throw pillows because you found them tacky." Her voice was eerily level, each memory a polished stone dropped into a still pool. Remember my orchid? The one James gave me for our first anniversary? You tossed it in the dumpster, said it attracted gnats. And my French press? You took it, declared normal people use instant. Or how you guilted us out of visiting my family for the holidays because you needed help canning pickles? Dolores tried to interrupt, but Emma held up a hand, a simple, powerful gesture that silenced her. I endured it, for James, for the kids, for a fragile, false peace. But your husband saw. He saw how you treated me, how you tried to make me a guest, no, a servant in my own life, and he made a decision. I didn't coax him, I didn't ask. He came to me and said, Emma, I want you and those babies to have a roof over your heads no matter what comes. She sat back down and picked up the pen, her fingers now steady. And you know what? He was right. Because the first thing you did after his funeral was not to grieve, but to demand the keys to my home. You hadn't even waited a week before you started planning our eviction. How dare you? Dolores sputtered, her face mottled with rage. I am James' mother. I have a right. You have a right to respect, which is earned. You have a right to the care we've always given you, but you do not have a right to my future or my children's. She turned back to the attorney. Let's proceed. James! Dolores clutched her son's arm, her nails digging into his jacket sleeve. Are you just going to stand there? She's taking everything our family built. James looked utterly broken. He loved his mother, loved her in that complicated, obligatory way a child loves a force of nature. But he saw, with a clarity that was finally piercing the fog, that his wife was speaking the truth. He had been a spectator in his own marriage, hoping the tension would just evaporate. Mom, Dad made his choice. Your father was sick. She manipulated him. She weaseled her way in. Enough! The shout burst from James, surprising even himself. The room seemed to flinch. Enough, Mom. Dad was lucid. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he was right. Dolores recoiled as if slapped. You taking her side? I'm taking the right side, he said, exhaustion weighing down every word. Dad didn't want you to have the condo because he knew you'd sell it. Just like you sold the lake house Grandpa left you. Just like you pawned Nana's silver. Just like you spent his entire pension on luxury trips and designer bags. How dare you speak to me like that? How dare you speak to my wife like that for a decade? He fired back, a dam breaking inside him. 10 years of your nitpicking, your insults, your attempts to drive a wedge between us. 10 years I stayed quiet because I was afraid to upset you. But it stops today. Dad trusted Emma because he knew she'd preserve this for his grandchildren, and I stand with him. The silence that followed was deafening, absorbing the echoes of his outburst. Dolores stared at her son, her expression shifting from fury to a kind of horrifying recognition, as if she were seeing a stranger. Her facade crumbled, revealing not just anger, but a profound, shocking hurt. Traitor, she hissed, the word venomous and final. You chose this nobody over your own flesh and blood. I chose my wife, James stated firmly, the mother of my children, the woman who has built a home for me for 10 years, despite your every effort to tear it down. He walked to Emma's side and placed his hand on her shoulder. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was an anchor, a declaration. Emma felt a warmth there she hadn't felt in years. Sign it, Emma. Dad wanted the kids to have security. Emma looked up at him, her eyes glistened, but a real smile, tired and triumphant, touched her lips. For the first time in their marriage, he was her ally, publicly, unambiguously. She turned to the document and signed her name. The signature flowed, strong and unwavering. You'll regret this, Dolores whispered, her voice cold as stone. Both of you, you'll be sorry. Don't, Mom, James said, the fight gone from his voice, replaced by a sad firmness. Just don't. You're still our family. We'll still be here for you, but it will be on new terms, as equals, not as a mistress and her maid. Dolores swept them both with a look of pure contempt, a queen surveying traitors. I have no son, she announced, and turned on her heel. The slam of the heavy oak door reverberated through the office like a punctuation mark. The attorney cleared his throat softly. "Shall we complete the paperwork?" "Want to see how this family drama unfolds? Stories like these are why we dig into the complexities of relationships every week. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next." The next half hour passed in a blur of procedural calm, signatures, notary stamps, the soft shuffling of paper. When it was done, Emma and James stepped out onto the sun-drenched street. The afternoon light was jarring after the dim, wood-paneled office. "I'm sorry," James murmured, squinting against the sun. "I should have done that years ago. I should have stood up for you." Emma took his hand, lacing her fingers with his. Better late than never. But why today? What was the final straw? James was quiet for a moment, watching the city traffic flow. "Last night, Max asked me, 'Daddy, why does Grandma always make Mommy sad?' And I had no answer. It hit me. The kids see everything. They're learning from us. If I keep silent, Max will learn to be a doormat, just like his dad. And little Sophie will think it's normal to be treated poorly by someone who's supposed to love you." He turned to face her, his eyes earnest. "Right before he died, Dad pulled me aside. He said, 'Protect that wife of yours, James. She's solid gold, and you're a fool if you can't see it.' He was right. I've been a fool." "You were," Emma agreed, a gentle, forgiving smile finally reaching her eyes. "But it seems you're getting wiser." They walked down the tree-lined street, hand in hand, a simple connection that felt new and familiar all at once. Emma knew the war wasn't over. Dolores would rally relatives, wage a campaign of gossip, try to isolate them. But the battlefield had shifted. Today she wasn't a lone outsider in her husband's family. She was a wife with a husband who had finally chosen her. "You know," she said, "your dad was a smart man. He knew you'd find your spine eventually. This was his safety net, his way of giving us a chance to start our own story. Do you think she'll ever calm down?" "No," Emma answered honestly, "but we don't need her approval anymore. We're adults. We have our own family. We make our own rules." That same evening, Dolores sat at her sister Valerie's kitchen island, a glass of wine untouched before her, detailing the betrayal. Valerie listened while stirring a pot of soup, the rhythmic sound a counterpoint to Dolores's furious monologue. "Maybe, Dee, you pushed a little too hard?" Valerie ventured carefully. "I mean, the girl's been around for 10 years, giving you 2 beautiful grandkids." "You're on their side now, too?" Dolores snapped. "I'm not on a side," I said. "I'm just saying, remember how you suffered with your mother-in-law? How she criticized your every move, said you weren't good enough for her son? You swore you'd never do that to yours." Dolores fell silent. The memory was sudden and vivid. Her late mother-in-law, a stern woman with impeccable taste and a tongue like a whip, making her feel like a clumsy intruder in her own early marriage. "This is different," Dolores insisted, but the conviction had bled out of her voice. "Is it?" Salary sat down opposite her. "Looks to me like history's repeating, only now you're the mother-in-law with the sharp tongue. And I think your Frank saw it. That's why he did what he did, to protect her, the same way he used to protect you from his mother." Dolores stared into her wineglass. In the secret, quiet part of her heart, she knew her sister was right. But admitting it meant she had become the very villain of her own past. "It's too late to change anything now," she muttered. "It's never too late," Valerie said softly. "Call them. Apologize. James is your son. He'll forgive you. And Emma, she's not cruel. She'll forgive you too, if you mean it." But Dolores shook her head. Pride, the same stubborn pride that had once been her armor against her mother-in-law, now formed her prison, a vicious, inescapable circle. Meanwhile, across the city, Emma was tucking the children into bed. Sophie, clutching a worn, stuffed rabbit, asked, "Mommy, why was Grandma yelling?" Emma smoothed her daughter's hair. "Sometimes grown-ups have big feelings they don't know how to handle, sweetie. They get scared, and it comes out as yelling." "Is she not coming over anymore?" Max asked from his bed, his voice small with worry. "She'll come," James said, appearing in the doorway, his voice firm with a new kind of assurance. "Grandma loves you guys. She just needs a little time to remember how." Later, on their small balcony overlooking the city's twinkling grid, Emma leaned into James. "Do you really think she will?" "She's stubborn, but she's not stupid. Eventually she'll realize her grandchildren are more important than being right." He paused. "And you'd be okay with that?" Emma considered. A decade of slights doesn't vanish overnight, but she'd also seen the pure, unfiltered joy on her children's faces when Dolores played with them. Those bonds mattered. "If she comes in peace, yes, but on our terms, James. No more jabs, no more running the show. My silence is over." "And it should be," he said, pulling her close. "My dad was right. You're gold, and I won't let anyone tarnish you again, not even my mom." 3 weeks passed. Dolores sat alone in her quiet, tastefully decorated living room. The television droned on mute. Her phone sat on the coffee table, a silent judge. Valerie had mentioned, casually, that Sophie had her preschool spring recital tomorrow. She was to be a butterfly. Dolores had never missed a recital, had filled her phone with videos to show her bridge club. A war waged inside her. Grandmotherly love, a fierce and genuine thing, battled against her monumental pride. Love, for once, began to win. Finally, she picked up the phone and dialed. The ringing seemed like an eternity. "Hey, Mom?" James's voice was cautious. "James, The apology stuck, a lump in her throat. "What time is Sophie's recital tomorrow?" 10 a.m. "Can I come?" A pause. She heard muffled voices, a quick consultation. "You can," James said finally. "But Mom, let's agree. No drama, no commentary. You come as Grandma, not as before." "All right," Dolores whispered. The next day she arrived early. Emma and James were already there, saving seats in the front row. When Emma saw her, she gave a small, polite nod. Not a smile, but the hostility was gone. "Hello, Dolores." "Hello, Emma." They sat beside each other. An awkward quiet lingered, thick and uncomfortable. Then the children filed onto the makeshift stage and everything else faded. Sophie, in a sequined butterfly costume, beamed. Spotting her grandmother in the audience, she gave an exuberant, unscripted wave. After the applause died down, as they gathered their things in the crowded hallway, Dolores spoke without looking at Emma. "The costume was lovely. Did you make it?" "I did. Took most of 2 nights. It's impressive. I never had the patience for sewing." It was almost a compliment, the first in 10 years. The road to a truce was long and never fully paved. Dolores never managed the full, formal apology her pride forbade. But the criticism ceased. The unannounced visits stopped. The commands were left unspoken. And Emma, in turn, let the old grievances rest. A year later, at Max's birthday party, they could sit at the same table discussing his science project and summer camp plans. They never became confidants. Too much history lay between them like a buried landmine. But they learned to respect the borders of each other's lives. And the condo at the center of the storm? It was traded, just as Emma had said, for 2 smaller apartments. One was deeded to Max, the other to Sophie. Frank Henderson's wish was fulfilled. His grandchildren had their foundation, and the family, having weathered its fiercest gale, found a different, stronger kind of calm. Sometimes, in the quiet of the evening, Dolores would remember that day in the lawyer's office, and she would admit, only to herself, that her daughter-in-law was far stronger and wiser than she had ever given her credit for, and that her late husband, perhaps, had seen the future clearly when he entrusted it to Emma's hands.